Honorable Chairman and members of the Board of Commissioners, it is my honor and privilege to submit the fiscal year 2021-2022, or you'll hear it referenced as FY22 recommended budget. Staff prepared this budget in accordance with the laws of North Carolina, guided by the Board of Commissioners' strategic priorities.
The managers talked about our budget more from a general fund perspective, but as you know, we have multiple funds that make up our total budget. And so this slide shows you that as a combined budget, we are looking at about $393 million for the fiscal year 22 recommended budget. The bulk of that and the focus of this presentation will be on the first two, which is the general fund and the community investment fund. Those make up 92% of the dollars that we have allocated. And so when we look at the general fund, obviously property tax is the most significant revenue source, and so we are seeing about a 4% growth there. And the only other item on this that I want to call out for your attention is sales tax. As you recall, last year we did a significant reduction, expecting the pandemic to have an impact on our sales tax. That was never materialized, and so our sales tax collections have been really strong. And so you'll see about a 42% increase year over year in the sales tax budget. And then this just gives you a breakdown of our major revenue sources within the general fund, which obviously property tax makes up 72% of our revenues, and then sales tax is about 13%, and then it goes down from there. So this one I want to spend at least a little bit of time on because it can be a little bit confusing. So within the general fund, we have transfers out to other funds for other purposes. And so these represent transfers to our capital projects fund, which is for projects that are capital in nature. So these are items that school operating reserved was mentioned in the message. That is the $3.4 million that the school is going to use one-time federal money and allow us to use this $3.4 million to cover deferred maintenance projects. The second we talked about last year is we still have one more year before the new courthouse opens. And so we have $2.6 million that will be needed once it opens. In the meantime, we're able to use that towards one-time projects. Annual county deferred maintenance is just regular deferred maintenance projects that Kyle manages for us, and so that's $2.5 million. In FY22, we have insurance and bonds that we do not need the general fund appropriation for that purpose because we have a sufficient fund balance that we can appropriate. So for 1 year, we're going to be able to use that $974,000 to do capital projects, and then in FY23, it'll go back to that original purpose. And then the last is the child care facility we've talked about on prior occasions. The ongoing expense for tuition assistance would be about $275,000. We do not need that in FY22 because we have existing funds. And so we're going to reserve that as a one-time capital expense so that in FY23 it's there when we need it. Again, transfers to other funds. So the previous slide is transfers to our capital projects fund. This covers our transfers to other funds. So the first two are the community investment fund. We transfer out each year $37.2 million. That is revenue that is going into the CIF on an annual basis. The second item is a one-time contribution to the CIF. This is a hedge against any potential downturn on our sales tax. So at a staff level, you always have concerns about how that's going to play out, especially in a pandemic environment. And so when you see a 42% increase year over year, you get a little nervous. Were you too aggressive? And so this $3 million is protection against being short on that revenue source. If we come in at or above our revenue for sales tax, this money would go towards one-time capital projects for next year. And then the last two are the Arena and Events Center and the landfill fund that we have contributions that go over there to balance those funds. We talked about education, and so this just summarizes the additional investments being made in education. I think the one that is of note is the significant capital investment that this budget reflects. And so that is 48 capital projects for Cabarrus County Schools, 15 for Kannapolis City Schools, and 4 capital projects for the community college. And then this just shows you, based on our fund balance goal, which is that red line, what our anticipated fund balance is within the community investment fund. And so what you see when we're above the line is the potential for additional projects in future years. because eventually we'll be able to spend that down. And the other benefit to that is we can spend it down as cash rather than debt. So this can lower our debt burden in the years ahead. So just to summarize the next steps, as we talked about earlier, on June 7th, we will have our public hearing. June 10th will be the next budget workshop and the final budget workshop if that is needed. Budget adoption is scheduled for June 21st, and then we would have our new budget kick in on July 1.